or very similar to Ebola infection.
Oh my God.
So, everybody says, why don't they land on the White House lawn and come out and shake hands?
Yeah.
Maybe if they did, we wouldn't be around long to talk about it.
Well, I don't know, Doctor. For a long time, I've been very suspicious and uneasy with the majority opinion in the UFO community that these are warm, fuzzy little things. I've never felt that, and I've always felt very strongly the possibility that no matter how you look at this, and I stand back and look at the reproductive experiments and that kind of thing, and I'm not thinking they're acting in our favor. And I'm not so comfortable with the fact that they're warm, fuzzy little creatures, and I think the UFO community better get over it.
I think that, my advice to the UFO community in general is they better wake up and get scientific and drop some of the illusions that have been floating around for years.
Good luck.
But who knows? But anyway, back to the story, because this is so important.
Please.
One of these creatures was injured, and that's the one that sat on this poor soul's lap, and he was taken to Hospital Regional, met there by an additional military contingent who took over a portion of the hospital, the surgical wing. This is not a big place to begin with. And there, the creature underwent some sort of treatment. We didn't know until this witness heard I was coming to town and called Ubijar Rodriguez and said that he would be willing to talk to me, not as any kind of a UFO investigator, but as a colleague.
Yes.
So a meeting was arranged. Nothing was allowed to be taped. There was no video, no recording of any kind. We met him. I took my traveling companion, who was acting as my cameraman, Ubira Jara, and his son, who acted as the translator.
Why this provision of no recording equipment?
This man was frightened to death. This, for him, was a catharsis. He had not spoken to anyone in 6 years. He was threatened not only with the loss of a job and his license, but he was threatened with a little more serious.
That would all do it. That would do it. All right. So obviously no recording equipment. He'd been, really apparently had his neck wrung out by the military down there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
right.
when we got there and the meeting took place, a disclaimer was the first thing out of his lips. This didn't happen to me. These are rumors. These are things that I heard about. I have no relationship at all, etc., etc. If you want to hear this, I'm willing to tell you about it. So absolutely. So we sat down and we started the questions rolling. And of course, the information I got was through, like you mentioned earlier, through interpretation. However, when it came to the medical terminology,
Yes.
the medical lingo,
Yes.
we were one-to-one. Didn't make any difference whether he was speaking Portuguese and I was speaking English.
Yeah, makes sense.
We were able to understand, and I got more knowledge out of that than what came from the interpreter's lips.
Then tell me about that.
Well, as I said, he started with a disclaimer, but then when he started talking about the events and what happened, and
Well, that's what I want to know. What the events and what did happen.
yeah, he was not told what this was. It was some emergency. There was military in the hospital. That wasn't surprising because they had accidents that happened on the base and they took in people, and etc. So he was not surprised to see a military contingent in the hospital at all. He was taken in, asked to go into the surgical wing of the hospital, and military guards, after he went in with a couple of colleagues and assistants, were closed off they told him, don't come out until he's resolved the medical problem. Don't ask questions and just do your thing. Very matter of fact, do it. Make sure the patient's alive, and then he can come out. So he was there with the surgical personnel and so on. There were some X-rays that were up on the view box. They looked at the X-rays and found that there was a compound fracture of the leg. And at that point, he went over to the table and started to roll back the drape and was horrified because he looked at it and he thought that this was some kind of terrible, horrible deformity, human deformity. But as he began to examine what was laying there, he realized that this was not a human being at all. And he described it very similar to what the girl described, a creature that was about almost 5 feet in length, with a large head, a thin neck, brown, oily colored skin, no body hair, no facial hair, no mustache, a tiny little nose.
And he gave it to you in that detail?
Yeah, in that detail. And I'm glad you asked that, because at this point his demeanor began to change, and he had to sit there as a witness and watch this to completely understand the emotion that was because it was only a short time after this that it was easy to realize these were rumors. He was the guy.
No, I've got it. But in terms of this wasn't human, so but apparently he had had what we would think of as a leg, and it was obvious that there was a bone.
Yeah, that was a broken leg with the bone sticking out through the hip.
So we know already that the metabolism is fairly similar to that of human beings in some ways, right? The construction of...
Yeah, we went through a lot of detail, which I don't have time to go into at all, but I'll mention a few things. I asked him about the blood and the bone. What's the blood like? Is it blue and tubes around on the floor or what? And he said, no, the blood is very similar to human blood, even with the cellular constituents. With the one large exception was that there's a set of little small white cells called platelets. And the platelet reading, he said, was about 10,000 times higher in human blood.
Wow.
And that it clotted almost immediately as it came out the blood vessel, but he didn't know whether this was due to increased platelets or whether the blood was being exposed to an atmosphere that was different than where this thing had come from. But the bone was again very similar to the human bone, except it was a little more pink in color, and then it contained what is called medically lacunae. These are holes or apertures that are in the bone that almost look like osteoporotic bone, which human is a disease bone, which the calcium drops out. Holes. But he said because of these internal lacunae or holes or apertures in the bone, the tensile strength of the bone was much, much stronger than human bone. And he knew that what he had to do was to, of course, put the bone back in the fracture and so on.
Yeah.
And at some point, he said he lost control, and that whatever was happening was that whatever was laying there was controlling the movement of the hand.
Oh, exactly.
And he reapproximated the bone, and when the ends were reapproximated, in other words, put together.
Stop you for a question. Was there any anesthetic?
Yes, they were afraid to administer a gas anesthesia because they didn't know what this respiratory system was like.
Right.
They guessed, that it would react to what open anesthesia, so they used it. But even after they used it, they didn't know whether it was producing anesthesia or whether the being had control over what he was seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Once the bone ends were approximated, he said he couldn't move it.
Did the creature make any noise?
No noise, but did move on the table and head turning movement. And then there was a lot of rumors in this case. Some of the rumors indicated that this creature no plates, no pins, no screws, no wires.
Right.
Because when the bone ends were approximated, you couldn't move it.
It healed right away?
The whole thing healed, he said, within 24 hours. Bone
Oh my goodness. This is hot stuff.
It's an absolutely amazing, emotional story. And there was an episode that I'll finish with here, which is even more amazing. I won't go into all the details, but there was a telepathic communication between me and the being and the doctor. And he said it was like downloading large amounts of information into his head. And it felt like somebody was hitting him over the head with a hammer.
And the nature of the information?
I'll get to that. He said that it was making him sick, like migraine headaches, which lasted for 2 weeks afterwards.
But he knew he was getting it.
He knew he was getting it, and I asked him, can you tell us, what it is that you learned from the creature? And he says, I'm only going to tell you a very little bit at this meeting. And I said, okay, go. And he said the first thing the creature said was that he felt sorry for human beings. And I said, why? And his answer was because the creature said that we could do everything that they could do, but we didn't know how to do it. And number two, the other reason he felt sorry for human beings is, and this is very, very prophetic, he said because we were totally detached from our spiritual self.
Maybe so.
Now, when this interview was finished, again, all I can do is basically describe that here's a man who hasn't talked about this to a soul in 6 years, telling us the story. He's now sitting in a chair with his head bent over, his hands on sides that are absolutely shaking. Oh, the tears running down his face.
Well, hold it right there. Holy smokes. Years since I've heard one unwind like this. My guest is Dr. Roger Leir. He's a podiatrist, but he's a ufologist. And what you've been hearing tonight, this one goes down in the records. I mean, this one absolutely goes down in the records.
Code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from east of the Rockies, call toll-free 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
You're very lucky. If you joined us, you dropped right into the middle of one of the best shows on ufology I've ever done. And I've done a lot of them, believe me. My guest is Dr. Roger Leir. And here's the reason for it all. He's telling us things that just haven't been told before about what went on in Brazil and a lot more. It'll continue in a moment, and yes, we will take calls beginning this hour, so doors open. We will indeed take some questions for Dr. Leir, but here's another one. Here's another one that comes from a listener, Casey in Eugene, Oregon. Hire, could you please ask Dr. Lee if there was any indication of gender on the being? Did they observe any specific genitalia?
The answer to that, like the last one, is no.
No. That's an interesting answer. I mean, so much of it is reproductively oriented. That's curious, isn't it?
Well, we don't know, whether these are the same fellows as the other ones. The descriptions of these things are certainly different from the ones that
They sure are.
Roswell.
Yeah, very different. Very different.
Maybe different strokes for different folks.
Maybe, but the fact that there's so much reproductive study of us and maybe even use of us that maybe they, well, I don't know, it could lead to so many different lines of thought about, I'm always anyway, trying to figure a motive to all of this. It seems reproductively oriented.
Well, I think that's true, with some of the other features that were described, a little residual nose, no particular peanut for ears,
Yeah.
a mouth that didn't appear to be used for chewing or taking food in. They may not have need of some of the necessities that we have.
Very true. You mentioned all this had a different ending. In other words, it didn't all get hidden away and protected by the military and hushed up. Somehow it ended differently.
Well, it did because of, number one, of the amount of witnesses that come forth. And as I said, as we speak, there is a conference going on in Virginia. It's the first one of its kind that were held there. The same doctor that we interviewed has come forth with more information. The doctor that treated the military police officer who succumbed to his interlude with one of these beings is also talking. The Brazilian military is retiring a number of people there. The stint in the military is a little bit different than it is here. Other witnesses came forth when I was there. For example, we were allowed to go into the fire department, which is no. You don't get civilian visitors in a military installation there.
Is there any indication, Dr. Lear, that the U.S. government at any level that we're aware of got involved in this?
Oh, yes,
unfortunately. Oh, really? Okay, how?
The eyewitnesses talk about the transportation of material and bodies to a town called Campinas, and ultimately to a university where an autopsy was done by the famous Martin Polaris, who was the famous autopsy specialist and pathologist, and described the bones of Mengele. And he was brought there by a military contingent, and there were U.S. military seen all around.
No kidding.
And plus, when I was there before, I brought back some agreements that were between the U.S. and NASA and the Brazilian government, in which one was signed by Warren Christopher, and the agreement essentially was that they would allow the United States access to all non-terrestrial material obtained in Brazil, and because of that, they would give back all the results of what they found from back engineering for use in the private sector. One of these documents is on my website if folks would like to go there.
And the website is?
AlienScalpel.com with one S.
AlienScalpel.com. I would think, I haven't looked yet, but I'm sure we have a link up on our website, CoachBuzzman.com right now, that would take you there. Otherwise, that's the website. Well, because this is so recent and because of everything you described, this actually, so far it sounds to me like it puts Roswell in the back seat.
Well, it does. Roswell, let's say, is a contracting case, and this is an ever-extending case. Also, we're dealing with different kinds of people. Both have been harassed, but you got to remember that the government and the military in Brazil is a little bit different than what we have here.
Are these beings still alive?
Well, I guess we should finish the story. What happened to the being that was in the hospital?
Yeah, what happened?
I asked the doctor, I said, what happened? And he said the being, after 24 hours, was taken by a military contingent out the back door of the hospital and taken away.
Alive and well.
Alive and well. And I said, what condition was he in? And he said he was in satisfactory medical condition. Now, what does that mean? Well, we have categories that we classify patients in. And if some movie star is injured in the hospital, like, he's critical. Those are all specific terminologies to describe, how the individual. But when you say a patient is in satisfactory medical condition, that means the individual's vital signs are all normal and present, and the patient is ambulatory.
All right.
That's the condition this fellow left the hospital.
All right, so he left alive. Jumping back for 1 second, I'd be derelict not to ask about this. While in the hospital, inevitably, there's going to be some blood work and chemistry normally ordered, I would think.
Well, there was, because he was able to describe the minute details of the blood. And there was blood work done. There was lab stuff. There was x-rays taken. All this was removed.
But he saw it all.
He saw it all. But, again, my quest for going there was the hope of bringing back physical evidence.
Right.
But just almost as important as physical evidence itself sometimes is reliable eyewitness testimony. So this is a jewel.
Yeah, first person stuff like this, you betcha. So anyway, he saw the being leave the facility in good or in okay condition, satisfactory.
Right, with a military contingent. Now, we have eyewitness testimony again. It says that this being was taken with several adjoining vehicles immediately to another hospital called Humanitas Hospital. Was taken in that hospital, and the following day, 3 trucks pulled up to the back of the hospital, each looking like the other, military trucks, flatbeds with a canvas cover and a box, something like a casket, was loaded onto the back of one of these trucks, and this being was placed in it and taken away. So within 24 hours,
Something approximating a casket. So at this point,
all indications is that he is dead. Now, again, there was some nursing testimony from Humanitas Hospital that said that, for whatever the reason, they administered high dosages of oxygen to this patient in an attempt to resuscitate it, and either the oxygen killed it or it died from God knows what other causes.
well, if the attempt was to resuscitate it, the presumption would be it was already in distress at the point they tried the oxygen drip, huh?
Right, and the rest is all conjecture, but, again, I have my own opinion, and it might be absolute baloney, and I'll put that out as a disclaimer, but I think that any being that says it's in touch with its spirit and can heal itself or with others without being in a facility. This is one of the things that relate to the doctor. Any being with that kind of control, it seems to me, has the ability to leave its body and carcass behind and go to a better place.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure it was intelligent enough to get a dose of our primitive hospital facilities. Probably figured that, I'm not going back where I came from, so goodbye. But, I can't prove it. It's just my opinion.
And where do you think the craft now might be?
It's here in the U.S. someplace.
We know it's in the U.S.
Yes, there was, again, testimony, military testimony. They even know what base the trucks wound up at and the kind of aircraft it was loaded onto and going back to the U.S. Tremendous amount of knowledge in this case.
Yeah, this is incredible. So is there going to be an effort to officially, in some way, get these witnesses together? I mean, this sounds like a monster story, just a gigantic story, and well worthy of the kind of attention that was lavished on Roswell, only maybe even a lot more, because this is recent.
Oh yeah, yeah, and as I said, it's unfolding as we speak. There's differences. Again, the military tour of duty is much less was in the United States. These guys retire, and after they retire, they see whether they're not bound by some of the military oath. They talk. And I started to say that there's a difference also in the way that the Brazilian people have been treated by their military through the years. You got to remember that part of that government, was a bunch of jackbooted thugs, and they treated people in a despicable manner. So they were used to, to living under that. We're not here. So they become defiant.
By the way, I was going to it's worth asking you whether you ran into any of that kind of military attitude when you were there. In other words, here you were sniffing around into something that the guys with the jackboots couldn't have been that happy about.
Well, I had a little bit of trepidation because I thought, gosh, this is what's going to happen. We pulled up in front of the fire department, and the car says you're not legal or allowed even to take video or photographs of the front of this place. He said, but I'm going to get out of the car and I can walk over there. And he says, I guess I can't stop you from photographing me. So that's what we did. We photographed him, and of course, with the zoom lens on, we got the whole front of the fire department facility. And when we got over there, two fellows came out, and we had a conversation with him, and soon he was waving at us to get out of the car. And we went in there, and they treated us like colleagues. We even put on the uniforms and took pictures with them. And we saw the very fire truck that was used in the capture of one of these beings.
And you're now suggesting the Brazilian military is so thuggish that the people are actually in rebellion against being treated that way, and so I guess I would conclude from that anything is just words and that the threats are not real, or else they wouldn't be acting that way.
At least some of them. The doctor certainly was the one that took their threats quite seriously. The other one was the wife of the deceased military police officer, and she had never been interviewed either. And I did about a 20-minute interview with her, and it was very enlightening because she told me nothing. Every single question I asked her, she had no answer for. And I asked a very specific question. Did you look at the medical records of your husband? What were his symptoms?
Right.
How long was he home before he went into the hospital? Right. Did you get a death certificate? Did you go to the funeral? Where was he buried? Et cetera. All those answers were, I don't know. No, I didn't get anything. I never ever got a death certificate. I don't get any compensation from the Brazilian government. I don't get anything from the military. When you have children, how do you live? I don't know. So there was another.
These are such basic questions about the death of your husband that I don't see how there could be non-answers.
Of course, she was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But then others, for example, the wives of some of the military police officers that were on the base. Now, this is an interesting story. They're used to their husband coming home on weekends. They're spent on the base this 5 days.
Sure.
So they come home and they have plans with the wives, even the families.
Sure.
Well, this episode occurs and a weekend happens. The husband didn't come home, but the wives had plans. So the following week, they went into the local hairdressers and they were talking to the hairdressers and they were complaining. My husband didn't come home because we were chasing aliens around the countryside.
Oh, dear. Well, how treat the whole thing? I mean, it would be a big story. If not here, then there at least.
Big story. Headlines in most of the major newspapers. A lot of TV. In fact, when I was there, I did on-the-spot TV, 2 radio programs, and these remote units are broadcast out to millions of people who get these channels in Brazil. Very open. Not unusual there to see Albany hovering above Sao Paulo, above the capital of Brasilia. That's a headline in the paper, and people don't really get too excited.
Well, that was going to be my question. How Brazilians react compared to U.S. citizens?
They don't get too excited about it. In fact, you can pick up really anybody listening to news. Go get a tour book in Brazil. Look up UFOs. They'll tell you what it is for UFOs. It's an everyday occurrence, and there's stuff going on down there now, which is just absolutely tremendous. I've seen some pictures taken, of craft. There's interactions between somebody and primitive peoples who live in the Amazon jungle. Things going on there that we don't hear about.
What do you think in the Brazilian psyche that's that much different than the American psyche allows them to think in such an apparent nonchalant way?
When you're more open about a subject, I think that it's the common psychology that you become less sensitized to it, and you look at it like the local football score or the local soccer match. When things are kept a secret, and ridiculed, they don't have the ha-ha TV factor down there. I've done many hours of radio and television in Brazil, and I've been on some shows that were like documentaries, and then others that were variety type shows with everything from naked dancers to musicians to newscasters to whatever. It's a whole system. All the life is different there. Their eating is different. The times of the day that people do things is different. Very open society, very warm, hugging people. They love to eat, and it's a place where you don't want to go to get breakfast. You find it necessary.
But your impression is they're an honest people, and that what you heard from all these witnesses, very important stuff, was the real McCoy.
Absolutely. I was impressed with the sincerity, as I have with other places that I've gone to in Brazil. I was above the Black Sea, which is a southern region where 3 areas, countries come together: Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. You can stand at one spot and look to 2 other countries.
All right, hold it right there, Doctor. And we are going to have to take some phone calls. We're going to do exactly that when we come back. If you have a question for Dr. Lewin, I bet you do after hearing all this. Well, here we are. About 30 minutes to 2 a.m. here on the West Coast. I'm Art Bell. Time tonight. No, you didn't.
Art Bell. Call the Wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from East of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From West of the Rockies, call Art at 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art Bell by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
You do not frequently get an opportunity to ask somebody who knows this much about an alien race questions. Dr. Roger Leir is my guest, and that's where we're going. You know, I'm just a talk show host, right? And I do talk shows on this kind of material. So, obviously, I've heard of this incident in Brazil. I have never, ever had the kind of details laid out in front of me that we've had tonight. Not even close. So, obviously, this is a monster case. Let me set this up. I'm recalling. This story you've been telling us, Dr. Leir, in other words, this is a big one. And is it going to be the kind of deal where some investigative magazine, you know, like 60 Minutes or I don't know, whatever, goes down there and pops this story wide open to America months or years down the line?
Well, I've been discussing this case with some possible television outlets, producers that have some interest, but you know, just like you mentioned, the Phoenix Lights, that's an ongoing thing. It's not over. I'm here at the Bay Area UFO conference, and two physicians were here, one Katai, her husband, who lived in Phoenix, and actually filmed the Phoenix Lights and surrounding incidents going on for months.
I know.
And it's still going.
I know, but nobody's ever going to be able to explain the delayed press reaction by months, and then all of a sudden like it happened yesterday, and I just wonder, could that happen here?
I don't know, but I curiously doubt it.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just very pessimistic over the whole thing, but yeah, I mean, there's good indications in what you're saying, and what we all know is that there seems to be some magical control over the public information system. I don't know. I suppose, you know, if you had a thorough understanding, you could make some good predictions, but I certainly am not in that position.
All right, but in the position you are for a few questions. First time caller line, you're on there with Dr. Roger Leir. Hello. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hello. Turn your radio off, please. First thing you gotta do, everybody. Okay. You have a question for the doctor?
I just want to comment.
Okay?
Comment is, you know, after 60 years of procrastination, why does the government just come clean on the aliens?
All right, well, that's a question, all right. That's a big one. And actually, in the case involving Brazil, it's got an even bigger implication. I mean, things have happened in Russia, China. There's been incidents all over the world. And if you can prove that, you know, our government knows, well, then other governments also know. And there must be some degree of complicity, or this story would have been broken wide open. think, Doctor?
Oh, I do indeed, and I believe that the information is under somebody's control. But you have to kind of stand back and look at the whole thing. Where should the blame be placed? Is it terrestrial blame, or maybe not terrestrial blame? Maybe there's somebody else that doesn't want this information all over the place. If NORAD has the ability to notify the Brazilian military of the coordinates where a craft is going to impact in Brazil, and the eyewitnesses describe it with a piece missing and smoke pouring out of the back, I wonder how it got in that condition.
Maybe more to listen. Number 2, Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Dr. Roger Lear. Turn the radio off, please. All right, sir, go ahead.
All right, first of all, I used to be one of those non-believers, the people who scoffed at all the alien encounters, but that all changed with my own encounter. That's a whole story in itself.
Mm-hmm.
My question for your guest is, with all the sightings that were down in Brazil, and the continuous sightings that you mentioned, how come there's not much more media coverage up here? Other than like you got the Sun Times and all those, colorful papers that reported every day.
Maybe it's that we've done such a good job on ourselves. I mean, what greater disinformation organ could there be than the way the press reports all of this since, what's his name, held the balloon up, said this is what it was. We seem to destroy ourselves in a way. Ufology is a self-destructive sort of thing, isn't it, Doctor?
It seems to be, and my other comment on that is how much news do we really get in the U.S. about anything that goes on in Brazil, even the most trivial stuff? I like cars. I've collected cars for years, and I didn't have any idea that Volkswagen, the old ones, the Beetles, were produced as brand new cars in Brazil up until just a couple of years ago. So how much do we really know about what goes on?
Very, very little. I'm always telling my audience they should be listening to international shortwave. That's one source of news you don't get here. And then, of course, the internet gives us the luxury now of reading newspapers that come from Moscow and around the world. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Roger Lear. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dora, and I'm calling from Texarkana, Texas. I get your program over WAI San Antonio. It's a pleasure to talk to both of you. My greetings to both of you. The question that I need answered, please, is the radio faded out some, and we did not get all of what the aliens said to the doctor. One other thing that I would like for you to address, and then I will hang up and get that over the radio. I have missing time, and I'm well aware of having been abducted before. I have no fear of this. I believe I do have something in my arm, and for some strange reason, I'm reluctant to even consider having it taken out. And I'm wondering if you could comment on that. Thank you very much.
There are people, Doctor, who, and Woodley's one of them, is fearful, that thing in his ear. He's actually fearful of having it removed. I remember a lot of trepidation about that. Is there any basis for that? In other words,
well, he asked me once, he said, can you guarantee, I'm not going to croak after this is removed? And I said, yeah, sure. No way. But all I can say is from past experience, and I've removed a lot of foreign bodies. I've been in practice now over 41 years. I haven't had anybody have bad results, but the 12 cases that we did, if that's any use, the record, none of them croaked. None of them croaked, and everybody is...
it is reasonable fear. You just finished telling us about a man who croaked after having one of these things on his lap.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between having something on your lap than having something in your body. Certainly, I'm not going to give away any guarantee.
Well, that would have slowed me down, too.
the gentleman who just called, our last caller, in order to, and in answer to his last question, if he thinks that he has something in his body and he really wants to know, for heaven's sake, go out and get an X-ray taken.
And then talk to you.
Yeah, then if there's something there, or if there's not, he wants to send me the X-ray, I'm happy to look at it.
All right, his first question actually was what the alien said, or, was transferred by mind.
Well, what the doctor told me, we'll repeat that, was two things. He said that number one, he felt sorry for the human race, and when asked why in this conversation, he says because human beings could do what they could do, but we didn't know how to do it. And an example, he said that wherever it is he came from, it would not be necessary for him to be in a facility to cure the problem that he had, because either singularly or in unison with others, they could produce a cure without being any kind of specialized facility. The second one was that he felt sorry for the human race because we were totally detached from our spiritual self.
Do you think, based on all you know, Doctor, so far in this lifelong investigation, that we should, how should we think of these visitors? Should we think of them as potential friends, watchers? Should we be afraid of them? What?
Well, if humankind is any indication of what's out there in the universe, better watch out, because, there's good guys and there's bad guys. So I wouldn't give any blanket invitation to anybody.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Dr. Lee.
Yes, I'm calling from Wayne County, Oregon, and this is beautiful timing. I have been studying, I have two questions. First, I heard that a Dutch binder could find the implant, and then I had a comment.
Interesting question. One of the cases that I operated on was a fellow who was by trade craftsman, carpenter, contractor, and he knew he had an object in the back of his hand for years. In fact, he'd been in for 46 similar years. And he would have fun, and he would entertain guests by taking a stud binder and running it over the back of his hand.
I had heard that. And my comment, and I want to know if you agree, I was accused, I had begun to hear, or I thought all these doctors and that, and they're all saying that's about UFOs and such, but I love God and I love spirit, and I began researching, and there is a very interesting, when you said iron tonight, it just ran the chills through me. There's a scripture that talks about the enemy of mankind, or the adversary, that will mingle himself or themselves with the seed of men that are of miry clay, and they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men that shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And it says by doing this in the Hebrew, so what I do is I go and get the words in English, and then I look up the number in Hebrew, and then I give the translation and run it all together, and it is mind-blowing.
Well, that certainly was. Thank you very much. That really was pretty good. There is apparently some biblical support for iron being mixed into all of this. I wonder, Doctor, do you think that when all is said and done, the only reason that I've ever imagined that the American government, intelligently or the shadow or whatever, wouldn't tell the American people would be if the real truth was, or at least we were told by those who came to us in this manner, that they in essence were our gods, our designers. That would be totally unacceptable to the majority of the American people. I mean, I read a story in the first hour of the program, Doctor, about a cat with wings. This cat is deformed. There's something weird that had wings. This was in Russia. And the first thing they did was drown it because it was a devil. filled with the devil. Devil cat, that means, so they drown it.
We're not primitive, are we?
Well, if we do that with a couple of weenie signs on a cat, imagine what we do to something like what you described.
Yeah, well, look at some of the stories again, back to Roswell, particularly the one that kind of excites and nauseates me is the one, the story about the military personnel who hit this ugly creature in the head with a rifle butt.
That's right.
So, yeah, there's going to be reactions, but I think there's, like we said before, there's different reactions by different people. And the world is changing. Certainly, countries are becoming much more of a melting pot, particularly the United States. We're getting used to seeing all sorts of things. Look at the kids being raised in schools today. And getting used to looking at everything. Look at the bumper stickers on cars, the gray alien.
All of that's true, but I still say if we pulverize the little creature or cut it up or, it wouldn't be good one way or the other. Houston Rockies are on there with Dr. Roger Lear. Hello. Yes.
Yes, I have can I ask you a question?
Turn off your radio, please. That's number one. And then, I've got a guest, so do you have questions for my guest?
Well, I have a question from last weekend.
Okay, well, that's right. I appreciate it, but that's not appropriate at the moment. Wild card line, you're on the air with Dr. Roger Lear. Hello. Very short on time here.
Hi, I'm calling from Albuquerque, and this doesn't have to do with Brazil, but it has to do with Anderson people. They all live in the same neighborhood now, but they don't want to mention it. Near the bay, they have something growing out of them, and it's like a parasite that just keeps growing, but it looks like fishing line. You just pull it out of their skin.
That's pretty weird.
And it's very, very bizarre. One of the guys spent $40,000 trying a doctor trying to have to figure out what he has growing out of his skin. But he's not the only one. A little girl in the neighborhood had part of her intestinal tract removed with this stuff.
This stuff?
Well, and nobody, no doctor has ever said what it is.
Well, all right, that brings up actually an interesting question. If these implants, or if things done to human beings, are in some way negatively affecting them, doctor, with things like that, I don't know, other oddities that show up, would we necessarily register the fact that what we were seeing as some medical weirdness actually had a source, an extraterrestrial, possibly an extraterrestrial source, or it's an artifact of tampering with genetics or whatever?
I think you have to go back to the source of the problem. As I said in the beginning of the show, I believe we should stick with academic science and use it as a tool, not to jump to conclusions. We know, that space has organisms, and those organisms come to Earth. Other things that come to Earth also carry organisms. Who knows where Ebola came from? It just popped up all of a sudden. You hear that infection?
Absolutely did.
So, where did it come from? Things like Jose Escamilla was looking at. These rocks, they may be leftovers from the far past. Our environment is filled with all kinds of mysteries.
There are so many things that we just don't have answers for. Tonight really has been totally full of them. All right. Listen again, for the DVD or for the book, a second edition about to come out in a week, and/or the video DVD, that's got to be a winner. Here's the phone number, area code 805-495-2613. 805-495-2613. It's been a pleasure, Doctor, and it's been an amazing night. All I can say is thank you.
My pleasure, and as usual, it's wonderful being on the air with an intelligent, clear-thinking person.
Thank you, and good night, Doctor. All right. That's it, folks. That's the weekend. I'm Mike Ball. Here's Crystal with just the right words to take us out.